Comey, the former FBI director who spent weeks lecturing millions of Americans, including the president, on what a good leader should look like, is about to get blasted in a brand new report by the Inspector General. Today, word got out that the pending IG report will not hail Comey for his leadership skills. In fact, quite the opposite, calling him insubordinate, specifically when it came to investigating federal abuses in the lead up to the 2016 election. Good evening, everybody. I'm Sandra Smith, in for Martha MacCallum tonight. Well, his reported defiance apparently stems from his decision to reopen the Clinton email investigation just days before the 2016 election, failing to heed reported warnings that he was not following protocols. This all paints a very different picture from the one Comey has painted of himself. In an April ABC News interview, Comey was asked, if Attorney General Lynch had ordered you not to send the letter, would you have sent it? Comey responded, no way. I believe in the chain of command. But the IG report is expected to say in this case, he did not. And he might have admitted it during his exoneration of Hillary Clinton.
I have not coordinated this statement or reviewed it in any way with the Department of Justice or any other part of the government. They do not know what I'm about to say.
And James Comey, reportedly not the only official the IG report is calling out. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live in Washington with who else should be prepared. Catherine?
Well, thanks, Sandra. The Inspector General's report puts Director Comey's leadership style under the microscope, with the Inspector General exploring whether Comey went beyond his authorities in July 2016 when he publicly discussed the Clinton email investigation and recommended against criminal charges, a responsibility that fell to his boss at the time, Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Comey has since explained that Lynch's Arizona tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton just days before Hillary Clinton's FBI interview from his handling classified information was a game changer. In addition to other intelligence that implied Lynch would not let the email investigation go too far. That intelligence is not public and its reliability unclear. In the draft, the Inspector General reportedly rebukes Lynch as well for her handling of the federal criminal probe. Comey testified to Congress that Lynch advised him to call the criminal investigation a matter. Comey said the language concerned him because it tracked too closely with the language used by the Clinton campaign. On Fox, the former director seemed to choose his words carefully about Lynch.
I think we're both telling the truth. I never went to her and said, Loretta, I think you should recuse yourself. My problem was she had already announced it publicly that she wouldn't and that she would accept my recommendation. And so at that point, what do I do? And I decided at that point, I got to step away from her.
The Inspector General's report had bipartisan support when it was opened in January of 2017 because Republicans thought Clinton should have been prosecuted, and Democrats blamed Comey for reopening the investigation about 10 days before the election. The upcoming public hearing is called Events Leading Up to the 2016 election, and that would seem to indicate that the report may be broader than just the Clinton emails. Sandra.
Catherine Herridge, thank you for your reporting on that. Here now, Senator Lindsey Graham, member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a committee that has often been at the center of getting to the truth in all of this. Senator, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
So there are clearly new questions, I suppose it's fair to say, over James Comey's handling of events surrounding the 2016 election.
Yeah, we'll see what the report says, but I thought, you know, Director Comey was sort of out of control, bouncing from one idea to the next. I hope the report will look at the FISA warrant abuse. I hope they'll tell us about how a dossier prepared by a foreign agent paid for by the Democratic Party wound up being used to get a warrant on an American citizen, and this dossier is still unverified to this day. I hope they will look at that too.
You know, we've heard so much from James Comey, as you just referenced. He was on his book tour. He was across all the networks and various publications. It was hard to miss him. He was really out there. We haven't seen much of him, and now to learn that he is the focus of this IG investigation, what should that tell us?
Well, I think the IG has looked at his leadership model and found lacking. At the end of the day, the reason he jumped into the middle of the 2016 election was because he believed there was some intelligence compromising the Attorney General Loretta Lynch. All I can say is that the two FBI, the Peter Strzok and Ms.
Page,
yeah, they were in charge of the Clinton email investigation. If you trust these two, then you're crazy. Look at the email chain between them. I think the Department of Justice was in the tank for Clinton. The FBI did not do a very good job of looking at the Clinton email investigation. It was a sham investigation. In the early stages of the Russian investigation, the Department of Justice was using material provided to them by a foreign agent, a former British agent, paid for by the Democratic Party. So there's a lot to look at here.
You know, but there was the Republican memo, there was the Democrat memo, and now we're waiting on this, and there's the anticipation is building by the day to finally see this Inspector General report.
Right.
And we have seen, and in this case, perhaps it's very critical of James Comey. Perhaps Democrats don't like it. I mean, they could discount it. We have seen that happen in the past. What is different about this Inspector General report as the American people are told that it is so highly anticipated by members of Congress and beyond?
Well, number one, it's not a Republican report. It's not a Democrat report. Mr. Horowitz is highly respected. He's viewed as a straight shooter. It's an internal investigation conducted by the Inspector General to call out abuses of the Department of Justice and the FBI. I think it will have a lot of credibility because of who he is and the position he has within the Department of Justice. But to me, it's not an adequate substitute for a special counsel to look at whether or not the law was violated. Did the FBI agent in charge of the Clinton email investigation act out of bounds? Was there a breach of the law when it came to how Mr. Steele was used as a confidential informant? Mr. Orr, the number 4 in charge of the DOJ's wife, worked at Fusion GPS, where Mr. Steele worked. There are a lot of really bad situations here, and I would like to see a special counsel look at this, not just from an internal point of view, but whether or not crimes were committed.
Meanwhile, you have been a critic of Rod Rosenstein. Of course, he's overseeing the special counsel investigation. Yeah. You've said he's conflicted, and I know that's your words. You wrote a letter basically saying he needs to recuse himself. You have received a letter back, and you're going to share with us what you've heard back tonight.
Well, one, it didn't come from him. It came from the legislative section of the Department of Justice, not from Mr. Rosenstein. Mr. Rosenstein's a fine man. It's not, I doubt his character or his qualifications. The problem I have is that I believe he will be a witness in any obstruction of justice investigation conducted by Mr. Mueller, and I don't know how you can oversee an investigation where you're going to be a witness. He's the one that wrote the memo to President Trump suggesting why Mr. Comey should be fired. He was also in the warrant application process, the FISA warrant that was issued based on a dossier coming from a foreign agent who went to Russia, paid for by the Democratic Party. He was involved in submitting that to the court. I don't know how you could look at that aspect of this case. So to me, he seems to be conflicted. I didn't get a very good answer as to why he's not.
Yeah, what was it?
Well, it was kind of gobbledygook. I understand why Sessions had to bow out because he was part of the campaign that they're looking at. I just don't know how Mr. Rosenstein is not part of the witness chain. And if you're a witness, you can't oversee the investigation that you're a witness in. So maybe I'm wrong, but the letter did not answer my question. I'm not going to give up on this. I've tried to make sure that Mueller can do his job without interference, but it really does bother me that Mr. Rosenstein has not appointed a special counsel to look at DOJ and FBI abuses. And the question is, can he legitimately oversee the Mueller investigation given the role he played?
Are you going to continue on with that?
Absolutely. I think it's time for him to come in and answer my questions, not a letter written by somebody else.
Meanwhile, the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, he is going further, trying to say that they're trying to frame the president. He said this, listen.
A group of 13 highly partisan Democrats that make up the Mueller team, excluding him, are trying very, very hard to frame him, to get him in trouble when he hasn't done anything wrong.
What do you think of that, Senator? It appears that we have lost the senator there, and that happens sometimes with live TV. We'll try to get him back if we can. Thanks to Senator Lindsey Graham. Okay, Senator, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, the beauty and joy of live television. So your response to Rudy Giuliani there?
It was the Russians. The Russians are trying to knock me off the air. Rudy, all I can say is he's pitching for the president. He's a good lawyer. Let's see what Mr. Mueller finds. It's his job to push back against the investigation. I'm not questioning these 13. I know they did this to Ken Starr and his folks. Time will tell. We'll see what kind of report they have. I've seen no evidence that the president colluded with the Russians. We'll find out sooner rather than later. It is important that this investigation be wrapped up, not to affect the midterms.
Interesting to hear his own lawyer saying they're trying to frame the president.
Yeah, right.
And they continue to say that they have done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, I know that you were at the White House today, and you met with the president. You talked about trade.
Yeah.
While that was happening, Senator, I have to tell you that there are new reports of American diplomats, while you're in that meeting, these reports coming out, new diplomats falling ill in China after hearing odd noises, they're reporting. They have been evacuated. The State Department got them out of there. But, of course, we saw a similar event in Cuba. 24 employees were affected there. And I wanted to get your response to that tonight.
I have no idea what's happening around the world, but somebody is trying to hurt our people. I don't believe on its face that the government of China would do this, but I don't know. In Cuba, I can't believe it happened without their knowledge. But Secretary Pompeo is really concerned about this, so am I. I'm in charge of oversight of the State Department, and our diplomats are, they serve our country in very dangerous places like our military. So we'll find out what happened, and we'll ask China some hard questions. But this meeting with the president, here's my takeaway. The president has a plan to get us better trade deals throughout the world, including our own backyard. He has a plan to get a better deal with Canada and Mexico. And I'm not going to do anything to undercut the president's ability to negotiate better trade deals. So this effort of having congressional review of tariffs, I don't think now's the time to do that. The president is pushing back against China. Somebody should have done it a long time ago. There was a plan in place that impressed me.
Interesting. It sounds like you continue to feel that way after a meeting today, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Lindsey Graham, thank you. Still ahead, Martha sits down with two heroes from World War II who share vivid memories from the battlefield, 74 years after the D-Day invasion. Plus, President Trump taking action after Kim Kardashian's White House plea, commuting the life sentence of nonviolent drug offender Alice Johnson. Governor Mike Huckabee has long advocated changing the criminal justice system and has been watching this case closely. He joins me with his take next.
Count me as somebody who doesn't keep up with the Kardashians, but I'm glad that Kim Kardashian is using her celebrity for something that's very important.
It's hard to even hope that our deal might be ending soon. But, we know that President Trump is a kind man and he's compassionate. He's always been kind to my family. He knows how important it is that my husband gets home to be a father to our daughters, that we can't help, to be hopeful.
Well, that was Patty Blagojevich. She says she's hopeful President Trump will show mercy toward her husband, Rod Blagojevich. The former Illinois governor has now filed official paperwork formally asking the president to commute his sentence. As we learned today, President Trump is reportedly considering dozens more executive actions on top of the 5 pardons and 2 commutations he's already handed out. And that now includes Alice Marie Johnson. Just 1 week after Kim Kardashian West met with the president at the White House and advocated for her release. The 63-year-old, who has served more than 21 years in prison so far for a first-time nonviolent drug offense, has had her life sentence commuted by President Trump. Trace Gallagher has the backstory from our West Coast newsroom on this. Trace?
Hey, Sandra. Alice Marie Johnson, who's now a great-grandmother, was convicted in 1996 of drug conspiracy and money laundering for her involvement in a Tennessee-based cocaine trafficking operation. The 63-year-old Johnson still claims she didn't sell drugs or make deals, but she has acknowledged wrongdoing. Here she is talking to the news site Mike.com. Watch.
When I lost my job, I struggled financially. I made one of the worst decisions of my life to make some quick money. I became involved in a drug conspiracy.
Appellate judges in the Supreme Court have all rejected her appeals, and former President Obama said no to her request for clemency. But her supporters, including reality star Kim Kardashian West, continued pushing for her release. And last week, Kardashian West met with President Trump at the White House, asking for him to grant Johnson clemency. Here's Kardashian right after the Oval Office meeting. Watch her.
It was really special. I feel like, you know, I went in, me and Sean, to really talk to the president about Alice Johnson and really explain to him why she would be such a good person to grant clemency to.
But win or lose, Alice Marie Johnson said she was grateful for Kardashian West's help, even writing her a thank you note saying, quoting, "I was drowning and you have thrown me a life jacket and given me hope that this life jacket I'm serving may one day be taken off." And today, after the president commuted the sentence, Kardashian tweeted, quoting again, "So grateful to Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, and to everyone who has showed compassion and contributed countless hours to this important moment for Miss Alice Marie Johnson. Her commutation is inspirational and gives hope to so many others who are also deserving of a second chance." The White House also released a statement today that reads in part, quote, "While this administration will always be very tough on crime, it believes that those who have paid their debt to society and worked hard to better themselves while in prison deserve a second chance." Alice Marie Johnson's attorney spoke out today saying he hopes the president continues to use his clemency power to save lives. Sandra.
Trace Gallagher, thank you. Here now, Mike Huckabee, former governor of the state of Arkansas, Fox News contributor and host of Huckabee on Saturday and Sunday nights on TBN. Governor, thanks for being here tonight. And I know this is an issue and now a story that is very near and dear to your heart and something you're very passionate about. Did you agree with this move by the president?
I really did, Sandra, and I appreciate Kim Kardashian West for using her celebrity for something that does good. Look, I understand a lot of people want to lock folks up and keep them there forever, but 22 years for a first-time nonviolent offender? There are a lot of people across America who have murdered people who will never serve even a third of that amount of time. My prison director in Arkansas, Larry Norris, used to say, we lock a lot of people up that we're mad at rather than the ones we're afraid of. And the fact is, at over $33,000 per year per inmate average, and that sometimes can be as much as $75,000, $80,000 a year, it's not working. It's not really helping us resolve a crime problem. And the truth is, Sandra, we don't have a crime problem as much as we have a drug and alcohol problem. A lot of the people that we're incarcerating, we need to be putting them in treatment centers. So I applaud the president because this took a lot of guts for him to do this. There's never, ever a political upside to granting any type of clemency, be it a commutation or a pardon.
It's really fascinating, and it's really capturing the attention of the nation, especially because we've sort of seen the president looks like he's been going on this high-profile clemency spree. I mean, you looked at the pardons, and then he's talking about more pardons, and then commuting Alice Johnson. And what is the goal, do you think, of the president here? What is he looking to achieve in the big picture?
Well, I think two things. One, he's looking at each case individually, which is frankly what the executive branch should do. They should never just say blanket, I'll never issue a commutation. Neither should they say we're just going to issue blanket commutations, clemencies, pardons for everybody. I mean, you've got to look at every case individually. But I think he's also using this as a way to point out some of the total failures in our criminal justice system and in the sentencing guidelines. It was real popular a few years ago, Sandra, to do the 3 strikes, you're out. You go say that at a Rotary meeting and you get a lot of applause. But it was one of the dumbest public policy moves we ever made in this country, and it has cost not only an enormous level of money, but it's really ruined the lives of a lot of people who had no business being in prison for life for, let's say, 3 $400 thefts. I mean, it's disproportionate to the crime committed.
Well, you know, Governor, I want to get this in here as we continue to learn more about just who Alice Marie Johnson is. 63 years old, and we are being told right now that she is officially and has been released from that federal prison. She was serving a life sentence. I mean, it's a remarkable story. Without possibility of parole, the Aliceville Correctional Institution in the state of Alabama, mother of 5, grandmother of 6, and a great-grandmother of 1. And she has now walked out of that federal prison, Governor.
And I'm glad she has. Again, think about this. Life without parole. That's the kind of sentence you give to people who have committed mass murder. It's the kind of sentence that you give to people who have created a savage cop killing. But for a nonviolent first-time drug trafficking charge, I'm not saying it's not serious to traffic drugs, but I am saying that the best way to deal with a drug problem is not just to lock people up and throw away the key and spend the taxpayers' money. It may be to put those people in treatment programs and then to recognize that there's no long-term advantage to just locking people up and making sure that they're caged for the rest of their lives.
But at the same time, this is an administration, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, Governor, but at the same time, and this is an administration, to be clear, that is shown to be very tough on crime. And I say that as we now know that Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, met several times with Ms. Kardashian leading up to this, in the months leading up to now her release from that federal prison.
Well, and I think to your point, there are some things for which people should be locked up for life. There are some crimes that are just heinous. You know, I believe in the death penalty. I had to carry it out more than any other governor in my state's history. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. But there were some crimes for which that was an appropriate adjudication. But my heavens, you can't go around and just put everyone up in a lockup. And then what you do is you've got to realize that when a person comes out as a felon, they can't even get a job emptying a bedpan in a nursing home because we've created background checks that say if you have a conviction, there are most jobs you will never be able to do. Now, how does that help us in the long term? Truth is, Sandra, it doesn't.
Fascinating stuff, and I'm sure we'll eventually learn more about this woman as she's been released. And those pictures in the Oval Office of Kim Kardashian West standing there with the president, those will live on forever. We'll keep following this. Governor, thanks for being here tonight.
Always a pleasure, Sandra. Thank you.
Well, putting the rumors to rest, First Lady Melania Trump making her first public appearance in weeks. So, where was she? Greg Gutfeld has a theory you definitely won't hear anywhere else. And did last night's California primary prove the Democrats' big blue wave was a bust? Newt Gingrich sees something in the results that the left certainly won't like. He is next.
And it looks like voters will have a real choice this November between a governor who's going to stand up to Donald Trump and a foot soldier in his war on California.
The animating question for me is,
did last night's California primary prove the Democrats' big blue wave was a bust tonight? Both sides tried to call the race as a referendum on President Trump. The Republican candidate for governor, John Cox, well, he thinks his endorsement helped him win. Gavin Newsom, the Democratic candidate for governor, thinks more Trump leads to more winning for his party. Please come campaign for him as much as possible. He says earlier today, I sat down with Speaker Newt Gingrich, Fox News contributor and author of the new book, Trump's America, The Truth About Our Nation's Great Comeback. What impact is President Trump having on the Republican Party?
Well, I think he's moving us to be a much more pro-jobs, pro-growth, really recreating almost a Reagan-like commitment. I think he also has been remarkable in creating many more conservative judges than anybody would have thought possible by now. But at the same time, I think he rattles a lot of more traditional Republicans. He's very aggressive. He's a genuine populist in the sense that I think he focuses on the hardworking blue-collar workers who historically made America such a remarkable country. and he wants to make sure that they get a good deal, and that's not always been the Republican model.
You know, and I know in your book you list the accomplishments of this presidency so far, and when it comes to the primaries, like we saw last night, and John Cox, are you getting the sense that the American people are feeling the benefits of this president's policies?
Yeah, I think there are two different things going on. I think among Republicans, he is probably the most popular president at this stage of any Republican. It's remarkable, the numbers. Even substantially more popular than Reagan was at this point among Republicans. But I think with independents and those Democrats who haven't drunk the Kool-Aid, the sheer weight of the economy is having an impact. When you have the lowest black unemployment in history, when you have literally yesterday an announcement that there are now more jobs than there are people looking for work, when you have the Federal Reserve saying that this quarter might be 4.8% growth for the economy, which would be a Ronald Reagan level number. No, remember, just 2 years ago, people were telling us you'll never get above 2%. This is the new normal. Well, we blew up the new normal. And Donald Trump is, I think he gets up every day, and about half of his focus is jobs.
So, Speaker, with all the talk of this blue wave that's coming, do you agree with the president? Maybe it's a red wave?
Absolutely. In fact, I was on Maria Bartiromo's show the other day, and it just hit me. We're going to win. We're going to gain seats in the Senate, between 2 and 6 seats. Well, how can it be a blue wave if we're gaining seats in the Senate? We're probably going to gain seats in governorships. So how can it be a blue wave? The only place that you can argue is the House, and frankly, Cox being on the ballot in California is an enormous asset for us keeping the seats in California. And if we keep all of our seats in California, they can't possibly get to a majority.
Remarkable. Real quick, I want to get your thoughts on this, Speaker. Another story we're watching tonight. Special Counsel Robert Mueller reportedly asking witnesses for their personal cell phones in order to get information off of some encrypted apps. This coming 2 days after court documents claimed former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort tried to tamper with witnesses and tried to hide it by using these encrypted apps on his phone. Apparently, forgetting Robert Mueller had a warrant to monitor his iCloud account. Oops, he forgot about that.
Well, this is, I thought Manafort was smarter than this. I mean, the fact is, if you're in this kind of investigation, the government has the power to get to the information. And if you try to hide it, they have the power to make you turn it over, unless you plead the Fifth Amendment and you end up in a situation where you refuse to testify and then you go to court. But I think this is a situation where you can't say to people, I really want all your information except the ones you want to hide.
Yeah. Well, he's got a hearing coming up June 15th. We'll see what happens with that. Trump's America by Newt Gingrich, The Truth About Our Nation's Great Comeback. I know that this is a book a lot of people have been wanting to get their hands on, and the president's a man you know very well, and you continue to tell his story.
He's a remarkable human being.
Speaker Gingrich, thank you.
Good to be with you.
Nice to see you. Melania Trump stepped back into the spotlight today after a media meltdown over her whereabouts. So where has she been? Greg Gutfeld has a theory, and that is next.
As of the time we're taping this show right now, the First Lady has not been seen in public for 25 days. Well, I'm not surprised. It took that Shawshank guy years to tunnel out.
First public appearance today since kidney surgery nearly a month ago, proving to critics she's in good health despite the media's hysteria. President Trump weighing in on that today, tweeting in part, quote, 4 reporters spotted Melania in the White House last week walking merrily along to a meeting. They never reported the sighting because it would hurt the sick narrative that she was living in a different part of the world, was really ill, or whatever. Fake news is really bad. So what does Mr. Greg Gutfeld think about all this? The host of the Greg Gutfeld Show and co-host of 5 joins us now. It's really good to see you, by the way, Greg.
You know, I feel good when you say that, because when I'm missing, no one cares. No, it's not a story when I go missing for a month. They just assume it's just me on a bender.
But
Not
so
fair.
where's she been, Greg?
No, this is the great thing about the media. No matter how the story pans out, you can spin it any way you want. So she's in public view. You can say, hey, maybe it's a body double, a hologram, a Melania impersonator. I have it on good authority that Brian Stelter believes she had been held captive by space aliens in a spaceship that looks like a Chick-fil-A. He's doing an all-star panel on Sunday called Who's Hiding Melania? I think it's on like Sunday at 5 o'clock, and it's going to feature an all-star panel, a birthday clown, a three-legged dog, and a jar of mayonnaise. Hey, do you know, have you been wondering where Jeff Zucker is? He runs CNN. I'm just raising questions, but I'm just wondering where he is. Could he be writing blog posts for Joy Reid?
Well, how about Howard Schultz? Where is he, and what are his intentions, Greg? Is he going to run for president?
I kind of hope so, because what do they have? The Dems right now,
Formerly the CEO of Starbucks,
yes,
just to remind everybody.
I'm aware of that. I go there sometimes.
He has indicated
to use the bathroom.
That perhaps
it has a lock on it, unlike some of these Fox bathrooms, which I've come to surprise Juan Williams on occasion. You know, if you look at the Democratic Party, they got Eric Holder, John Kerry, and Biden. Those are the front runners. Combined age 289. They're held together by Brill Cream and Gold Bond. It's not good for them. They have the charisma of Driftwood. They need somebody young. To his credit, though, to this guy, what's his name again, Schultz?
Howard Schultz, but Democrats don't even appear to like them.
Because he's a centrist.
The headline in the New Yorker, Democrats must reject Howard Schultz and his radical centrist ideology. He's the quintessential corporate Democrat, they say.
Well,
they don't like him because he's a business guy.
Yes. I mean, the Democrats' idea of work is painting a protest sign that says, don't work. Their idea of affordable housing is an overpass. Have you seen California? So he actually is a breath of fresh air. I just don't know if he's got the persuasive acumen that Trump does, because that's important. I said acumen, by the way.
That's very good.
Yeah, thank you.
This next story is one that we have come to see in the movies a lot. Watch this with us.
Lie down, Chauncey!
He's deaf.
I'm not deaf. I just can't stand listening to her.
So as it turns out, it's true. Scientists have discovered that animals are having conversations all around us, and some of them probably think
they're called
really
MS-13. Little right-wing humor for you. Anyway, it can't be interesting what they're talking about. They had mentioned in the article that naked moles speak. What are they saying? Give me pants? Who cares what a naked mole thinks? They've said that animals, when they communicate, they do not interrupt. They take turns, which means they could never be on cable TV.
Do you have any pets, Greg?
I used to, but each one ends in an unfortunate accident.
I'm so
Usually
sorry.
involving a broiler. Did you see in the article they said that frogs rap? Did you see frogs rap. It's a rhythmic croaking. I came up with some frog rap.
I believe it.
I came up with some frog rap names.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Snoop Frog. Ice Toad, Tadpole Shakur. These are really bad.
I feel
Busta
guilty.
Wog.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, look, you invited me on.
And they did.
Normally, I'd be at a bar right now.
I'm just afraid I won't be able to continue on. Greg, I really do.
Are you sad?
You know, it's great to see you.
Do you regret this?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay.
It's good. It's good to have you
It's
on.
okay. You could be honest with me.
Really important stuff. Well, we're glad Melania has been seen again.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yes,
amazing.
All right.
She knows more languages than any of her critics.
And he can just keep on going like this all night. Thanks, Greg. 74 years have passed now since D-Day, and tonight you'll hear from two of the brave men who took on Nazi Germany and won. Their remarkable stories as told to Martha MacCallum next.
We had to walk. I kept thinking the duffel bag was so heavy, and I kept thinking, I can't do this. But I thought, if all those other guys can do it, I can do it.
Today marks 74 years since Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy in a daring. Things they witnessed were unspeakable. Today, in a moving ceremony in Washington, some of the men who took part in Operation Overlord laid a wreath. But ahead of that event, the good folks at the Friends of the National World War II Memorial introduced us to two of those remarkable men. Martha traveled to Washington yesterday to hear their stories.
My full name is Harlan Lincoln Harnett. I was 18 when I went into service in April of 1943. I was 19 when I went overseas.
I was 18, and my full name is MacDonald H. Leach.
You were sent over. You were on a ship for a long time?
9 days on the Ile-de-France. I was seasick for 9 straight days. I never thought I'd reach the war, but it was a relief to get off the ship.
And what do you remember your commanders telling you about the mission, about D-Day, about the invasion?
Across the English Channel, Le Havre and Cherbourg, their major objectives, the greatest force ever hurled against a hostile shore.
I don't think they really knew too much what was going to happen. We were supposed to arrive about 10 a.m. to noon, and we didn't get there until 7 o'clock in the evening because of the heavy seas. So we stayed on the LST on the beach all night and watched the firing of the British battleships and all the other ships firing onto the German fortifications on shore.
What stands out for you when you think back to being there?
Seeing the wounded and some of the dead on the beaches was kind of a tough situation.
Tell me a little bit about your arrival in France after D-Day.
We had to walk. I kept thinking the duffel bag was so heavy, and I kept thinking, I can't do this. But I thought, if all those other guys can do it, I can do it. I stopped a piece of shrapnel right across this. It was nothing but a flesh wound. But I was left in the field all night and got pneumonia.
So you were left out overnight, wounded?
A whole bunch of us were, yeah.
There were interesting and funny times and really horrendous times. We were shelled. That was the scariest part.
One of the most poignant things to me was there was a club in London. This is before we went across to Normandy. There was such a nice girl that I danced with. And she said, my name is Dorothy, come anytime. I'm here most nights. One of the strikes on London from the air, that little dance bar was completely wiped out with everybody in it.
Did you lose any friends in the war?
We lost our battery commander, and we lost a gunner sergeant and our first sergeant. My very close friend, who was a radio operator with me, Bob Bowden from New Mexico, was captured, and he was injured, and he was in a German hospital for a while. And then when they left the town, they released him and let him go. And he came back without his helmet, and glad to see him.
You remember that moment when he showed up?
Yes, I do. When he showed up and walked into the battery area, I just ran to greet him. It was great.
And you were in pretty much every major operation, all the way from Normandy to VE Day.
All 5 campaigns. Normandy, northern France, the Ardennes, that's Battle of the Bulge, the Rhineland, and Central Europe.
Tell me about when you got word that the war was over.
This is a solemn but glorious hour. I wish that Franklin D. Roosevelt had lived to see this day.
Well, we heard it on the tanker's radio in Pilsen, and it was a wild celebration. We couldn't find any Pilsner beer. I said, where's the beer? Where's the beer? Well, some of the guys got out and found a warehouse full of wonderful German brandy. They filled up a 2.5-ton truck with it, and our battery commander said, that's fine, but you got to share with the rest of the battalion.
What about you, Don? What are your memories of that?
I remember that day very vividly. A little boy who, was always underfoot in the running here and there, and he came racing in saying, Das Krieg ist kaputt, das Krieg ist kaputt. And my lieutenant, he said, don't tell anybody, but I have something I've been saving. And he brought out a bottle of champagne that was room temperature, and We all drank, you know.
There's a prayer, I don't know, maybe you're familiar with it, that FDR read on the radio. Have you ever heard that?
No, but
it's a beautiful prayer, and it was a radio address to all of the people of America on June 6th, 1944, and in part of it, he says, "They will need thy blessings.
Their road will be long and hard, for the enemy is strong. They will be sore tried by night and by day, without rest, until the victory is won. The darkness will be rent by noise and flame. Men's souls will be shaken with the violences of war."
Wow. You know, Eisenhower, all of us who were going to be in on D-Day, Eisenhower wrote a letter, and part of it is it's inscribed right here on the wall.
Do you remember what he said?
We're about to embark on the Great Crusade, and Lord helping, we'll be successful. We shall not surrender. For total victory.
Remarkable men. Learn more by visiting www.